Okay, so our most popular video ever on this channel was our top 24 Dynasty rookie rankings and tiers, but I recorded that the day after the NFL draft. Since then, I've had time to let things digest, to really look into these situations, and we've had some training camp. We've had some rookie minicamp reports coming out with these guys, so these rankings have changed. These rankings have updated, and I'm going to be excited to dive into where these guys stand for us now. But before we get into it, please make sure you go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already, and only if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. If you don't play Dynasty, I'm sorry, this channel is not going to be for you. But I think that should be it. Let's go ahead and let's dive into this. Let's start at tier 1. Nothing's changed here. We have Breece Hall now. Yes, I will say with Breece Hall, I am concerned about Zach Wilson. I think this is going to be a bad offense overall, but running backs can overcome a lack of offensive efficiency based off of raw volume, based on what we had with Breece Hall at Iowa State. There's no reason to expect anything but an immense amount of work for Breece Hall this upcoming season. I mean, we even see this if you head over to Underdog Fantasy, which it will be the #1 spot for redraft leagues. And we see that there have been hundreds of thousands of dollars of drafts there already this offseason. So the ADP is pretty damn good. And if you look at where Michael Carter Jr. is being drafted, Michael Carter Jr. is being drafted as the running back 44 currently. So what that tells us is the overall community's expectations are that Michael Carter Jr. does not have a role this season. And if he does, that role is going to be very small. Now, I think Michael Carter Jr. will be a passing down running back at the beginning of the season, and then he'll transition over to be a premium handcuff near the end, which as a running back 44 is a fine value, and I'm going to be drafting him on Underdog Fantasy. But there's no question at all, Breece Hall will eventually be the workhorse running back here in New York. Now, let's drop it down to tier 2, and we've had so many people asking, okay, can I take Kenneth Walker at the 102? Can I take Kenneth Walker with the second pick? No, I think you have to go with these wide receivers. If you look at Drake London currently, Drake London checks every single box that you are looking for from a rookie wide receiver. He broke out at 18 years old at USC, where you had Michael Pittman Jr. there as a senior, where you had Amon-Ra St. Brown there as a sophomore. And if you look at the statistics, Thomas, please throw them up on a per game basis. When Drake London was 18 years old as a true freshman versus Michael Pittman Jr. as a senior at USC. Hell, they were comparable. Drake London was out there and giving the man a run for his money when Drake London was a small boy. So I think that just that alone, even if we don't look at the fact that he dominated his junior season, does make Drake London a lock for the 102. He's an elite level prospect. And now our 103 is going to be Treylon Burks. So this will be the first change that we had from that initial set of rankings. Overall, it's just if we look at the efficiency from Ryan Tannehill over the past 3 seasons and cross-reference that with the expectation for Zach Wilson going forward, I know Zach Wilson will be better his second year than he was his first. Oh my gosh, but he was horrendous his first. Just because he's going to be better, that doesn't necessarily mean that all of a sudden he's going to provide above average quarterback play. I'm going to prefer Treylon Burks in Dynasty, even though I think Garrett Wilson's the better player. And we will have Garrett Wilson at 4. It's a bet on the talent. I mean, here, the situation I think is gross. You also have to compete for targets with Elijah Moore, which isn't great. I do think eventually Garrett Wilson works his way to be the wide receiver 1 in this offense. But let's move on to Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker will be our last player in this tier. He will be the 5th guy off the board. And I will say, I am drafting the hell out of Kenneth Walker for 2022 leagues. Dynasty is a different story because if we look at Dynasty, I have questions about Walker's overall talent in that he cannot catch the ball out of the backfield. If we look historically, players that have a college target share as low as Kenneth Walker. Now, if they get drafted in round 2, if they have the elite athleticism and the size to be a 3-down workhorse, yeah, they could be Nick Chubb. Kenneth Walker, his ultimate ceiling is Nick Chubb. I don't think he's going to get there, but he can be a great 1st and 2nd down option. But we even see that the redraft community, like you assume that those running backs are going to produce right away. But if we head over to Underdog Fantasy, where you've seen so much money pumped into these drafts, Drake London currently has an ADP of 68, and Kenneth Walker has an ADP of 87. So at that price point, hell, I'll take Kenneth Walker. I'll take the rookie running back for his year 1 production, even though Rashad Penny's there. We know Rashad Penny just historically cannot stay healthy, but smart drafters on Underdog are telling us, yeah, these wide receivers are special. Kenneth Walker does have his own question marks, specifically in the receiving game. We are pushing him down draft boards. I'll say you should probably go over to Underdog Fantasy and draft Kenneth Walker for 2022. Not in Dynasty, not in Dynasty. And if you want to go sign up for Underdog Fantasy and get in some real money fantasy football drafts today, make sure you go to the link in the description, the link in the comment section, and sign up and use promo code FLOCK. If you use promo code FLOCK on Underdog Fantasy, A, you can have a ton of fun jumping into these drafts. B, you can get into drafts with us on the live stream. C, they will match your deposit dollar for dollar up to 100 with promo code FLOCK. D, you'll get our 2022 Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide over 130 pages. You'll get my Dynasty rankings. You'll get my entire list of Dynasty Rookie. You'll get everything. Just make sure you go to Underdog Fantasy with the link in the description. Use promo code FLOCK. Get in some drafts today. Have some fun. But let's move down to our third tier here. And this is where I think you can have some different arguments. I am personally going to say, you know what? I think these wide receivers were so good in this draft class. Every other position, pretty bad, not going to lie. But Chris Olave will be my sixth player off the board. Now, if you go over to Keep Trade Guide, if you look at where people are currently drafting Olave, you don't have to take him at the 106. You could potentially trade back from the 106 to maybe the 108, the 109, and still get Olave. But this was a wide receiver that had some of the toughest competition we have ever seen in college, with the combination of Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and Jameson Williams earlier on in his career at Ohio State. However, he was dominant in 2020, had almost 40% of this team's passing yards on a per game basis with both Jameson Williams and Garrett Wilson on the same roster. His senior year definitely took a step back, but the Saints traded up to get him at pick 11. I'm excited about Olave. Now our next guy will be a Jameson Williams at pick 7. With Williams, he finds himself in a pretty bad situation because TJ Hawkinson isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Amon-Ra St. Brown is not going anywhere anytime soon. And neither is DeAndre Swift. You have a ton of pass catchers on this team. And also with Jameson Williams, I do not think that you get any production really this season in comparison to these other players. Like if we head over to Underdog Fantasy real quick, just to check this season's expectations, Jameson Williams being drafted as the wide receiver 55, Chris Olave as the wide receiver 46, rounds ahead of Jameson Williams. If you want to make the argument Williams will be a better player in year 3, in year 4, sure, you can make that argument, but what I am saying is I'm saying if we think Chris Olave is going to be more productive right away, we think Chris Olave and Jameson Williams are similar prospects overall. I prefer Olave, but even if you slightly prefer Williams, why don't you draft Chris Olave now, get the production his rookie season, and then when his price increases more than Williams going into the 2023 offseason, then trade Chris Olave for Jameson Williams plus a piece. Now, our pick 8 in this same tier will be Kenny Pickett. I know most people are going to prefer having Kenny Pickett up here at 6. My issue is Kenny Pickett is going to have to be a very good quarterback to have job security in the long term. You could easily see if Kenny Pickett comes out here and he disappoints, maybe he's not Trey Lance, maybe he's not Zach Wilson, maybe he's not Trevor Lawrence, a quarterback that disappoints his first season and then can hold on to that job for the long term because the team invested so much into him that they have no other option. If Kenny Pickett is not able to start over Trubisky this upcoming year, it's not likely at all, but at least it's in the range of outcomes and we have to discuss it. Maybe he turns into Paxton Lynch, just because historically those quarterbacks that last outside the top 10 picks in the NFL draft, last outside the top 15, it's not a great sign, especially when so many teams passed on Kenny Pickett that were quarterback needy. I will say he does have upside stepping into a beautiful situation. That's why he's in this tier, but I have no questions with these wide receiver prospects. I think they will be forces for years to come, where I'm unsure of that with Pickett. Now let's move to our next tier, and this will be another update that we had, and right away, y'all told me I was wrong with this. Right away, you said, Mason, you got to fix this, big fella. Sky Moore needs to be at 9, and fine, I'll do it. Sky Moore was a better prospect than Christian Watson coming in. Sky Moore lands in a pretty good situation. If we look at Kansas City, not only does Sky Moore have the ability to potentially be an impact immediately in year 1, but even if that were not to happen, Juju Smith-Schuster is on a 1-year deal. Travis Kelce is going into his age 33 season. So if we look at 2023 for the Kansas City Chiefs, Kelce will be 34 years old. Juju will probably be off of this team. Sky Moore is going to be competing with Marquez Valdez-Scantling and a 34-year-old tight end. He checks every single box, broke out at an early age, dominated his junior season, declared early for the draft, gets the draft capital, was athletic at the combine, everything you want to see. Fine, I'll throw in the towel. We'll put Sky Moore at 9. And our player that was previously at 9 before this is going to be Christian Watson. I think with Christian Watson, yes, you have to be concerned about the age, and historically speaking, wide receivers that get propped up based on their size-adjusted athleticism, they tend to be overdrafted in the NFL draft and overdrafted in Dynasty. Now, I'll say I don't think that's necessarily Christian Watson, because if you look at his production, while yes, it was at a smaller school, his production was off the charts his final season. And yeah, it was at an older age, but the man, his junior year, had to play spring football because of COVID. He's the one guy I'm willing to give the COVID pass to. He's the one guy I'm willing to give the COVID excuse for staying an extra year, because he had to play football in the spring. Can't be halfway through your football season and then go, see you guys, head to the NFL. No, you can't do that. And now let's go to our last guy in this tier who actually ended up going in round 1. This will be Jahan Dotson. Now with Dotson, horrible situation. He finds himself with some of the worst quarterback play that you're going to see in the NFL with Carson Wentz. He finds himself with almost no chance to be the wide receiver 1 in this offense with Terry McLaurin, but it's a bet on the talent. It's not redraft. It is a dynasty fantasy football. Now, I will say, heading over to Underdog, just to look at expectations for this upcoming season, it is hilarious to see Sky Moore at an ADP of 85 and Jahan Dotson at an ADP of 144. Y'all have lost your minds. Jahan Dotson will have a better rookie season than this. And I've seen Dotson falling in dynasty leagues as well. But if you just look at the fact that he dominated his junior and senior year at Penn State, keep in mind, you had target competition at Penn State earlier on. You had KJ Hamler. You had Pat Frymuth there, which did not allow Jahan Dotson to break out at an early age. He gets the round 1 capital. Bet on the talent in the long term. Bet on that talent in the long term. Now let's go down a tier and let's look at George Pickens, player 12. This goes right back to it. I know there are going to be a lot of running backs people want to pump up here, but I'm looking at this class overall and I'm saying if I had to bet on a single position, that position would be wide receiver. And with Pickens, yeah, I was screaming how overvalued. The hype was ridiculous. Ridiculous before the NFL draft. This was someone people were trying to hype up over Chris Olave. I know it seems crazy to say now because it was crazy at the time, but now George Pickens is, if anything, a value. I'm getting him at the end of round 1, the beginning of round 2, every single chance I get. He broke out at 18 years old at Georgia. We didn't really get to see the true dominance because of the injury at the end of year 2. But I think there's upside. Pittsburgh's historically been fantastic at evaluating wide receiver talent, and they just lost Juju Smith-Schuster and James Washington, who played a decent role in this offense. Now, another update that we made was we are going to be moving James Cook up into this tier with George Pickens, because if we try to project James Cook out and look at 2023, he is the only guy under contract outside of Zach Moss. And Zach Moss, we saw last year, they were making the man a healthy scratch. Buffalo has no faith at all in Zach Moss anymore. So if we were looking at the Buffalo Bills with potentially no Devin Singletary, the best offense in the NFL, it doesn't matter if I think that James Cook was an overdrafted player in the NFL draft. It doesn't matter if I have questions about his overall size and if he can ever handle a 3-down workload. It may not matter because he's going to be seeing the most red zone opportunities of any running back if he has no competition in his backfield and he's playing in the best offense in the NFL. Now, let's go down to our next guy. Will be a tier down and honestly a pretty far tier fall. Malik Willis as the 14th player. With Willis, I want to say he has a very low probability, historically speaking, based off of his draft capital, to ever be a long-term starter in the NFL. And I had this question in a live stream the other day asking Mason, what has to happen for Davis Mills to all of a sudden be seen as someone that has job security? For these quarterbacks that go in round 3, round 4, round 5 of the NFL draft, yeah, we can all go through and we can all point out Russell Wilson. We can point out Dak Prescott. We can point out Tom Brady. These extreme outliers that didn't get the draft capital, but obviously are Hall of Fame quarterbacks. What happened for them to have that job security? What happened for them to immediately cement themselves as long-term starters? They came in and they were elite right away. Y'all have to remember, Dak Prescott, his rookie season, people were talking about the man as an MVP. Do you not remember the hype that you had around Ezekiel Elliott and Dak in Dallas? Maybe I lived in Texas at the time, so maybe it was just me, but no. Malik Willis literally has to be elite if he ever gets a spot start in Tennessee to hold on to that long-term job. But the reason I'm ranking here is the same reason I was willing to draft Jalen Hurts in the second round in 2020. Because while it's not a good bet for long-term job security, if he were to start in the NFL, based on his rushing upside, we know you could start him in fantasy. For that reason, we will have Malik Willis at 14. Now, our next player will be Rachaad White at 15. Goes to a situation where he will have a role. It's not like they're going to play Leonard Fournette 100% of snaps. Now, you're probably not going to be able to start Rachaad White outside of a Leonard Fournette injury, but he was the best pass-catching running back in this draft class. He ended up going round 3, which is exactly what we wanted to see. We needed to see him go on day 2 or before. So, if anything were to occur to Leonard Fournette, in an offense that now has no Antonio Brown, that wants to throw the ball over and over and over and over again, the man has a ton of upside in terms of his passing game ability. Now, our 16th player, honestly, I want to make an argument, though he could be at the top of this tier, but I know people would call me crazy. David Bell. David Bell checks every box that you look for outside of his speed. Outside of his speed, the man's slow. And based on that one red flag, I think David Bell's gone from being one of the most overvalued players in Dynasty. At the beginning of the offseason, people were ranking him over Chris Olave. That was happening. To now, I think he's one of the best values in Dynasty when we're looking at David Bell saying, hell, Amari Cooper may not be in Cleveland next year. We know in 2023, Deshaun Watson is not going to be suspended. David Bell could be the wide receiver 1 in a Deshaun Watson-led offense in 2020. Sign me up for some David Bell. And our 17th player off the board in this same tier will be Wan'Dale Robinson. With Robinson, a fantastic analytical profile. I mean, if you look at the production that he had at both colleges, and he broke out early, and he declares early for the NFL draft, and he gets the draft capital, he checks almost every single box you'd want to see. Now, the issue is, of course, the size. He is going to be undersized, and everybody has PTSD from Rondale Moore in rookie drafts last year. Now, I will say, just because Rondale Moore didn't work out doesn't necessarily mean Wan'Dale Robinson has no shot. If that was the case, the New York Giants would not have drafted the man in the second round. Now, let's go to our next tier, led off by none other than John Mechie. I know this is probably going to be early for Mechie for most people. Another slower wide receiver like David Bell. And he doesn't have the same production profile as David Bell because he went to Alabama. He is seen in a wide receiver room before. Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, Jameson Williams. He has been around some of the best wide receivers in college football, yet he has still been able to put himself on the radar, and he's still been able to overcome that competition, specifically over the past 2 seasons. He lands in Houston, not a great spot. I understand Brandon Cooks signed the extension earlier this offseason, but I am going to continue to try to bet on this wide receiver talent rather than running backs that I think are getting propped up due to situation. And now our next player will be Dameon Pierce at 19. I know this is going to be very low for Dameon Pierce, but my issue with Pierce and always these day 3 running backs is while maybe I'm drafting him on underdog, maybe I'm drafting him for 2022, even if he hits, right? Like, let's look around and say, okay, what has happened when these running backs with no team investment, they hit their rookie season, their top 24 RBs in fantasy? Who have been the breakout running backs from nowhere over the past 3 years? We had Elijah Mitchell. Oh, crap. They just drafted Tyrion Davis-Price in the 3rd round. We had James Robinson. Oh, crap. They just took Travis Etienne in the 1st. We had Michael Carter Jr. Oh, crap. They just took Breece Hall in the 2nd. Teams are willing to just go through and draft a replacement for a running back, even if they impress their rookie season, if they don't have the pedigree and they don't have the draft capital. Pierce is stepping into a great situation. However, the long-term upside simply isn't there. Now, our next player will be Isaiah Spiller. With Isaiah Spiller, a running back that we were making fun of after the NFL Combine. He went from being in our top 3 at the position to being undraftable because the combination of his size and speed, which directly correlates to NFL draft capital and directly correlates to fantasy success, which we have proven so many times over, but he lands in a great spot. I mean, with Austin Eckler, Eckler's never been a running back to see every single touch out of the backfield. And on top of that, if anything were to occur to Austin Eckler, all of a sudden, Isaiah Spiller maybe steps into that same role. He's a great pass catcher, and he's playing in a fantastic offense in Los Angeles as well. Hell, I'll easily draft Isaiah Spiller if he makes it to the middle of round 2. And then pick 21 is going to be Trey McBride. Trey McBride, you can make the argument maybe he's at the top of this tier if it's a tight end premium format, but you have Zach Ertz there. He's not going to do anything when Zach Ertz is still in town. If somehow, some way, he turns his rookie season into Pat Freiermuth, oh, you will be ecstatic. You will be so happy if you have Trey McBride being Pat Freiermuth his rookie year. But can you trade Pat Freiermuth for a first-round pick right now? No, you cannot. And that was best case scenario. Best case scenario from a rookie tight end. And that's why I'm always so against drafting these rookie tight ends, because even when you find that success, even when they hit their rookie year, you're not really cashing out on much. So let's have Trey McBride here at 21. And let's go down to our last tier. We're going to start it off with Matt Corral, pick 22. With Matt Corral, very similar to what we spoke on with Malik Willis. We'll throw Desmond Ridder here as well at pick 23. These guys could easily start. These guys could start, but if they hit their best case scenario, right? If they go through and if they somehow manage to put up Davis Mills and his rookie season's production, which is unlikely, 9 times out of 10, they're going to be worse than that. 9 times out of 10, they're going to be closer to Deshaun Kaiser than they were Davis Mills. Even if somehow, some way, they turn into Davis Mills his rookie season, could you sell Davis Mills for a first-round pick this year? No, you couldn't. And he was arguably, outside of Mac Jones, the best rookie quarterback in the NFL last season. These guys that don't have the team investment, Dynasty owners are smart. They know they don't have the long-term job security. They know they shouldn't go out there and overpay for those options. So we will have Matt Corral, Desmond Ridder, a little bit lower than most people would assume, because I know a lot of people think, oh yeah, these guys are the future. No, they're not the future. They're not the future. Probably going to be career backups. Now, our next guy, 24, will be Jalen Tolbert. With Tolbert, he could have a role right away. James Washington in a walking boot, and more importantly, Michael Gallup injured. So if we look around, go, oh my God, no Amari Cooper, no Cedric Wilson. Is Jalen Tolbert going to be almost an every down player to start the season for the Dallas Cowboys, an offense that we know is top 5 in pace of play, top 5 in pass to run ratio in game neutral scripts? That'd be fantastic. I mean, the man got drafted in round 3. He does have an intriguing production profile as well. And now our last guy we'll talk about. I know we're technically going 25 deep. We're going to give you an extra because he's in this tier. Alec Pierce, pick 25. He goes in round 2 of the NFL draft based on his athleticism. I think Alec Pierce is bad. I know very rarely do I want to come out here and act like I know more than an NFL team, but Alec Pierce did not break out early when he did not have great competition. He never really dominated at Cincinnati either. I'm not a big fan of Alec Pierce. If you want to take him at the 301, you want to take him at the 212, I'm fine with it, but let's not be taking him in the middle of the second. Now, that's all I got for y'all. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please go down there if you have not done so already. Drop a like, subscribe if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football, and I think that's all I got for you. I really hope we get to see you out with the live stream tomorrow, and I really hope that you have a great day.